everyone, I'm Amanda from Mandy Lynn Plans. Welcome back to another fountain pen video. Today we are going to talk about fountain pen nibs. There are a lot of different kinds and sizes of fountain pen nibs. I have a wide range here to share with you today. I do not have all of the nibs available, just the most common ones. I'm hopefully going to take some of the mystery out of fountain pen nibs for you in this video. I have all of these pens inked up with the same ink because one thing with fountain pens is there's a lot of variables that go into what it actually looks like on the paper. The nib plays a very large part, also the type of ink and also your paper choice. So we've talked about paper choice, we've talked about ink in a couple other videos. Today we're talking all about the different fountain pen nibs. Here I have them all inked up with Candy Cane by Diamine. This was in, I think, the 2018 or 2019 Inkfint calendar when they still did the glass bottles. Now they have moved on to plastic bottles. It's just a standard ink, but a really nice shade of red. So starting off, you will see that I have mostly TWSBIs. I also have a Pilot Vanishing Point and a Pilot Falcon to show you towards the end of the video. But in these first comparisons, I wanted to use all the same fountain pen brand so that there are less variables that we are experimenting here with. So here I have TWSBI Ecos. This one is a TWSBI Eco T. We have extra fine, fine, medium, broad, and a 1.1 stub nib. These are going to be the 5 most common fountain pen nibs that you see whenever you are buying modern fountain pens. I don't personally have any vintage pens. I'm not an expert in fountain pens at all, but especially not vintage stuff. So don't comment asking questions about vintage pen nib stuff. These are the ones that I am most familiar with. And here I have my currently inked notebook. This is a Hobonichi A6 notebook. So it has the older Tomoe River paper in it, and this is just where I keep all of my notes about which fountain pens are inked with which ink. It gets kind of confusing and easy to forget what I have in each pen. I have a lot of different fountain pens to try and keep track of. So here you can quickly see some of the variation that you will be able to see with different fountain pens. Just flipping through here quickly. At the back here, we are going to test out these different sizes of fountain pens. First, I have the extra fine. And normally you will just see EF whenever you are looking at something that has been written with an extra fine nib. Again, like I said, these are all TWSBI Ecos. TWSBI Eco is a fantastic, affordable option if you are wanting to get into fountain pens. I definitely recommend them. So here you can see, as the name suggests, that it is an extra fine tip. I also just wanted to do some X's and then some swirly S's. Next up, I have the fine, and this is going to be just a little bit larger than the extra fine is. The difference there isn't very substantial with this ink specifically. As I mentioned before, different inks behave differently in these fountain pen nib sizes. So then we have the medium, and you'll notice that the larger the fountain pen nib, the more ink that is laid down on the paper, therefore the longer the dry time. So medium is going to put more ink on the page, so it will take longer to dry. Also, what this means is that we're going to start seeing some shading. I love shading in fountain pen inks. This one is no exception. You will see where the darker red parts are of these letters. That's where the ink is beginning to pool. Some of the letters have lighter red spots and others have darker red spots. So that is what we're referring to when you hear the term shading. Medium nib is also where I start to recommend you use shimmer inks. I do not recommend shimmer inks in extra fine. The shimmer particles can clog up the nibs on those two pens, and even sometimes on the medium, depending on the shimmer ink. So I definitely don't recommend going smaller than a medium for your shimmer inks. Broad and stub nibs are also fantastic for shimmer inks. This one is the broad, so you will see that it is even larger and putting down more ink. It is very smooth to write with these because of the amount of ink that's going down on the page. Sometimes an extra fine can be a little bit scratchy, so there you can see a lot of line variation so far. Then we have the stub nib. Now the stub nib is my newest acquired pen, and I haven't done a lot with it, but it's really neat because it's wider across than it is deep. So you can see the broad nib, it's pretty symmetrical all the way around. The T, the line thickness is the same on the downstroke and the cross stroke. On the stub nib, you'll notice a wide downstroke, but the cross stroke is very thin. It's like it's squished instead of it being a circle. So if I write Twisby Eco, you can see some line variation there. And then I should write stub, and this is a 1.1 millimeter stub. So what's also really neat is whenever you do your X's, the lines on those are also different sizes, and then the S's are really cool on the stub nibs as well. So that's a way to make your handwriting look a little bit more fancy if you don't have any experience with hand lettering or a flex nib. Since I mentioned a flex nib, you're going to ask, I have a Pilot Falcon. Now this isn't technically a large flex nib, this is a soft flex nib. I have the fine, and what you can do with this, it's similar to brush lettering if you've done anything with that. Depending on the amount of pressure that you put on your pen nib, you will see a little bit of line variation. So if I am just really gentle and don't press down at all, you can see that these S's are all the same. There's no line variation. And brush lettering, what we do is we usually have a nice gentle upstroke, and then the downstroke we apply a little bit of pressure. So you will see that there's some line variation there. So what's happening is that the tines are separating on the fountain pen, and that allows for the ink to come out more because you're spreading the tines. You don't want to apply too much pressure, but that is how you get line variation on a flex or soft flex nib. Again, this is the Pilot Falcon. And towards the beginning of the video, I mentioned that I wanted to cut out as many variables as I could in explaining the different nib sizes to you. One of the reasons is because Japanese fountain pens, like the Pilots, are ground more fine than the other fountain pens that you'll find. So this comparison is really good if you're staying in the same brand, but sometimes you'll find a Japanese nib and it will kind of throw you off a little bit. So here is my Pilot vanishing points. I have a fine, but it's actually going to write more like the extra fine Twisby because the Japanese ground theirs all a size finer, if you think about it like that. So on my Pilot vanishing point fine nib, it actually writes more like the Twisby extra fine, and I will write a little bit beside it just to show you what I mean. So I'm going to write fine. I'm not sure why it came out so dark red at first, but there you can see it's pretty comparable with the Twisby extra fine. I can write next to this one, and you can see that it's a little bit smaller, and I can do my X's and S's down at the bottom there. I love the vanishing point because it does have a click and no cap to lose, so that's really great. I hope this video was educational for you. If you were wondering about fountain pen nib sizes, please leave any questions that you have down in the comments so I can do my best to answer those for you. I will be having more fountain pen videos coming up soon, so be sure to stick around. As always, thank you so much for watching. Until next time.